Welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, all about improving the lives of animals with better policies and practices in government and business. Brought to you by Animal Wellness Action, where we believe helping animals helps us all. Here's your host, Joseph Grove.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special video episode of the Animal Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Grove. Today, we're going to be talking about the wildfires in Los Angeles. News of them, of course, is inescapable. More than 12,000 buildings destroyed, dozens, perhaps, lives lost. Fortunately, today, there's good news. The hurricane force winds have died down. Firefighters and other first responders may finally be able to make some headway against the two blazes right now ravaging that Southern California area. Of course, we are very concerned about the people, but we're an animal welfare organization, and we're also very concerned about what's happening on the ground with animals, both domestic and wild. Today, we're going to be joined by Wayne Pacelle. He is the president of Animal Wellness Action. In his career, he has taken part in dozens of disaster response relief efforts for animals, most notably after Hurricane Katrina. Also with us is Dr. Annie Arbalist. She is with Animal Wellness Foundation. It's a charity that helps treat animals where there is no one who can or will pay for their care. She lives in the impacted area. She's going to tell us about how she is working to save pets in the middle of this disaster, and also how she is coordinating other efforts so that people who need to evacuate know how to do so with their animals and where they can go. It's a critical relief effort. Part of it, Wayne Pacelle will tell us, relates to ongoing efforts after this disaster to make sure wildlife receive what they need. It's an important show. I hope you'll stay with us. Dr. Annie needs your support, and I think you'll be heartened by what she and Wayne are doing to take care of animals at this horrific time. Dr. Arbalist, thank you so much. I know you've got 3 gazillion things going on. I appreciate your taking time to be here today. First of all, how are you and your family and your animals doing right now?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. I feel like I'm coming home to the animal wellness community by speaking with you and Wayne today. You know, I haven't had a lot of sleep. There's a lot going on in terms of, running around and trying to answer emails and trying to reach out to as many people as I can. So that's difficult. My kids haven't been seeing me very much. I'm trying to get to, at least, tuck them into bed at night or be able to drop them off at school in the morning. So I at least get a little time with them every day. And my brother, as a lot of people know, lost his house. And I do sometimes feel a little guilty that I'm not able to spend as much time as I should helping him. I've been feeling his absence lately, and it's because he's working on figuring out a place for his family to live.
And I'm hoping and that they all made it out okay. I mean, loss of property is one thing, but are they well?
They're very well, and they're doing great, really, because they're concentrating on what's important, that the family's together, that all their animals are okay. And so we are blessed that we have that.
All right. How close do you live and work to the fires?
Where we're centered in Marina del Rey is probably about 8 miles from the fire. I live a couple miles away from that. I live close to the airport. I feel like the smoke was the worst on the first 2 days, last Tuesday and Wednesday. It was really quite incredible. And the sky looked very apocalyptic. It was very scary. I can't let my children outside to play. They're staying indoors. Some of the school systems are closed, but for the most part, they're all wearing masks and staying inside.
Now, it looks like yesterday the winds did not get as bad as predicted, and it looks like the weekend the winds are going to stay down. Do you perceive that where you live is in danger at the moment?
There's a chance that it's like a false sense of hope. But here in Marina del Rey and in the LA area, we're not too concerned about the fires reaching us. The only time I ever personally felt in danger, we had 2 situations where they did a false alarm on our phones. One was in the middle of the workday. Everybody at work suddenly got a evacuation notice on their phone. And we were all, at the time, we were filled with animals. And we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, let's start. And then we realized quickly it was a false alarm. And then one time I had a false alarm at 4 a.m. I had actually just fallen asleep at 3 a.m. And at 4 a.m. I got an alarm that we were going to have to evacuate. And I woke up my husband and said, we gotta figure out what we're going to do. And he didn't even wake up. He said, it's fake. And then he rolled over and went back to sleep.
Sure. No doubt, especially after you've just fallen asleep and it's the middle of the night. Let's go back to January 7th when the fires first broke out. When did you get triggered into the action that has been so consuming for you for the last 8 days?
I'd have to check my phone. I think it was around noon that I first heard from my brother. He's the first I heard of it. In the morning, he had texted me and he said, "Be careful of the winds as you're going out today." But he texted me and said that he thought he was going to have to evacuate. And he sent me some videos and pictures from the back of his house. You could see the fires in the mountains. And at the time, it looked really far away. He actually was thinking, do I really need to evacuate? Because, he could see where the fires were. He could see the planes coming and dropping the water from the planes. And at first, he thought it was going to be fine. He was even thinking maybe we don't need to evacuate. And I'm like, no, you need to evacuate. At our hospital in Marina Del Rey, we're on one of the major streets here in Los Angeles called Lincoln Boulevard, especially on the west side. It's a pretty major street. And as I looked down the street north, I could see the fire burning in the mountains. So even though we were pretty far away, we could see it.
Did you begin receiving phone calls for help? Did you know right away that there would be a need and you jumped into it? How did you transmit yourself from being just a citizen to being someone who really took action to make a difference here?
Well, it started because I took my brother's cat and rabbit in because he had asked if I could take his animals, and some of my family's allergic to cats, so we couldn't take the cat. So we put the cat and the bunny in the vet hospital, in our vet hospital that we had just moved out of. And it was pretty much right away. It was almost like I could see the look in his eyes where when they got the animals settled, they got the cat in, they got the bunny in, and they knew, Aunt Annie has it. We're not going to worry about it. You could see that there was a little bit of a shoulder drop, reduction in stress. And that was almost immediate, where I realized there's going to be more people that need that. It was a little bit later that day when we really realized the severity. I had been going about my normal day, but I was getting updates from my brother on what he thought was happening with his house. And at one point, he told me he heard from a neighbor that his house was gone. And I said to him, "Are you sure?" At first you don't believe it, right? And so I said, "Are you sure?" And he sent me the alarm codes from his alarm system, and it was pretty terrifying because it's like smoke in the living room, windows cracked in the kitchen, windows smashed in the bedroom. You can actually see the list of as the smoke was and the fire was coming into the house, you could see it on the alarm system reports. And that was pretty intense. So it was right about the time that I started getting that information from him that I realized exactly how serious this is. And that's when I did the Facebook post letting people know that they could contact me to help if they need help.
What was the response to that post?
The response was phenomenal, and not how I had thought. I thought I was going to get a response of some people just needing care, or, I had a feeling that we would end up with a pretty full hospital, after a day or two. But the response that I got more than anything was an outpouring of support. So many people wanting to volunteer, so many people giving up their own, backyards, houses, cars for transport. It was really phenomenal how people came together to help.
What about the need that confronted you? how many people said, I do need help? And what kind of help did they need, and how have you been able to provide it?
When I did my original post, I was thinking I would just, be like a boarding place for people. But it shifted very quickly, and it turned into more of a networking center. Because I would get, an email from somebody saying, I live in Venice, I have a backyard, I'd be happy to keep a dog or two. And I'd get an email from somebody saying, my friend said I can live with her in Venice, but I can't have my dog. What can I do? And so I would just connect those two people together. And so instead of having a hospital full of people's pets, I ended up having an email box full of people that I was just connecting with each other. The people that ended up actually using the facility were people who had many pets. For example, a woman who had 10 cats and 2 dogs. She stayed with us the first 2 nights before she could find something else. And we've been helping out a lot of the rescue groups. Some rescues that have had to evacuate that didn't have any place to house like their 10 animals, 15 animals. And the new facility is a full-blown, full-service veterinary hospital. And what we're doing there is we're helping the animals that are found stray, that need medical care.
How many animals would you say that you have helped coordinate temporary placement for? And how many have you housed temporarily yourself?
I'd love to, when this is all over, maybe go back to through my emails, because I'd even like to know how many emails I'm getting. For a while, I felt like I was getting maybe 200 emails a day. Now I think I'm getting maybe like 50 emails a day. But it's impossible for me to really sit down and tell you. We had one rescue group drop off 5 dogs a couple days ago, and my husband has kind of taken on the task of finding fosters and getting them out. Within 5 hours, he had all 5 dogs in really nice foster homes. So he's been doing a lot of things that I haven't been counting. I haven't been keeping count. I would say it's not even changing on a daily basis. It's changing on an hourly basis because it's just going through so quickly. And then there are some other people that we're helping that it's not even like an exchange of animals. Like one of my favorite stories is there's somebody reached out to me. They're worried about their friend. The person who reached out to me lived in another state, I think like Colorado or something. And their friend was an elderly woman who was wheelchair bound with 3 cats. And they were worried she was right on the border of being evacuated. And they reached out to me and said, if she needs to get evacuated, is there any way you guys can help her? And I said, of course. Well, I connected her with like a man, a very nice gentleman who had wanted to reach out to me. Again, he was a client. I knew him a little bit as well beforehand, but he had reached out to me. He wanted to help, and he was a very nice man. And I called him up right away. I explained to him what was going on. I gave him her phone number, and he checked back with me a couple hours later and said, I reached out to her. She has my phone number. They don't need to evacuate her yet. I'm getting her a special thing to be able to push her cats so that if she has to evacuate, it's easy to take her cats. And the moment she needs to be evacuated, I'm the person that she's going to call. And
that's extraordinary.
So I've done
great.
that. We've probably saved some human lives because especially with the elderly, a lot of the older population are the ones that are staying behind. They don't want to leave their animals. They're scared. Sometimes they're alone. And there's been more than one instance like that where I've connected one of those people with somebody who's volunteering with us who I know I can trust to answer the phone when they get that call and they need to be evacuated.
You're listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsor.
Animal Wellness Action depends on countless people like you to support our fight for animals. Join us today by donating to further our campaigns to spare countless animals from cruel and needless pharmaceutical tests. Put an end to animal fighting. Liberate farm animals from extreme confinement and so many others. Become a donor at any amount. Visit animalwellnessaction.org/donate to join our fight against animal cruelty of all kinds. Again, that's animalwellnessaction.org/donate. Thank you.
Now, back to the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Wayne, in the intro, I noted that you have been part of many disaster responses, helping animals impacted by them, and the people who love those animals. How does Annie's experience resonate with your history with these types of events?
Well, first, let me just thank Dr. Annie Joseph. She is just a central part of animal wellness. She's the founder, as you noted, of Animal Wellness Foundation. She's the co-founder of Animal Wellness Action. She's devoted her life to animals, getting a veterinary degree. And, when you're at her animal wellness centers and you see her at work, as I've done so many times, every day is a crisis for her. Animals are afflicted by injury, disease, and the same sort of measured calmness that she is exhibiting during this crisis is how she handles every day. And this is, for a veterinarian, this is just a different form of activity, because in this case, the fires and the displacement, are driving people out of homes. They're creating a need for animals to find temporary quarters, if you will. So Annie opening up her hospitals to animals in need is something that she does all the time. They shelter animals at Animal Wellness Foundation, and this is really important. So I think, really, there's kind of before Katrina and after Katrina. During Katrina, and I've mentioned this to Annie in talking with her during these last 7 days, you never know how this is going to turn. This can turn just like Katrina. There was the initial response, and there were all the people who left animals behind. And then it was a race to get them. But then the floods happened, and the whole city of New Orleans was engulfed in a flood, which changed everything. It inhibited the ability of people to get back into the city, and it meant that getting to those animals was a race against the clock. Then there was after that, there was a second hurricane, Hurricane Rita, that came in. So it was one rolling crisis after another. And listen, we don't know what the weather patterns are going to be like in Los Angeles County and Orange County, but we could see more fires. And I think the key is that Annie is developing systems and capacity to address the issue. And during Katrina, we had so many organizations involved, so many volunteers. It was really chaotic. California has been a leader in animal welfare, and I think that the response from other authorities, whether they're nonprofit organizations or government agencies like Los Angeles County Animal Services, Los Angeles City Animal Services, they're doing important work as well. So I think Dr. Annie and Animal Wellness Foundation fit into an important role. But I think what's distinguishing about her is that she is a veterinarian. A lot of the vets are the ones behind the scenes who are treating the animals. She's out front, and she's telling the story about how animals are part of our families. They're part of our lives. And having animals reunited after they're separated is so joyful, because you can't reclaim your property, but you can reclaim your family members. And I know that her ability to facilitate those reunions has been so gratifying to her and to the other members of the Animal Wellness Foundation. So I think this is early in the disaster. I think that there's a lot of time left. We're going to see how it's playing out. California has already had housing shortages. Now, when you think about 12,000 structures destroyed, most of them homes, what does that mean? The great news is that there's a fantastic safety network for animals with Dr. Annie in the forefront, but many other organizations. And I know that she is cooperating with them because this is a team effort. This is a shared exercise.
One of the things she said that really touched me was the fact that her work may help save human lives because of the reluctance to leave pets behind. Wayne, what have you learned that people should do before a disaster strikes to make sure that they are not anchored by not wanting to relocate with an animal, or that they don't have a plan for that animal? What can they do to get ready?
Well, the biggest change, Joseph, on that front is that the human evacuation shelters and sites now recognize the human-animal bond, and you can go into those facilities with your companion animals. So when Katrina struck, the human evacuation centers wouldn't allow animals, and that's why you had more than 1,000 people who stayed behind who perished. Because again, it was one series of crises after another. And, it was the high winds and the incredible precipitation and the destruction of buildings. And then there was the flooding and then a second. And what you want to make sure is that people and animals get out together. But as Dr. Annie said, many people will choose not to leave if they don't have somewhere to take their animals. So I think Los Angeles and all of the different actors have really heeded the lessons from past disasters, and they're taking animals. I mean, Annie raised a really important question. There were a number of false alarms and on the evacuation orders through cell phones and the like. And that's dangerous to have false alarms, because if you do get an evacuation order and a fire is coming for you, you often have no time before it overtakes things. My wife is a television journalist who worked in California for ABC News, and she used to cover fires, and she'd say it's incredible. I mean, it just eats up 100 yards before you can blink. So getting out is crucial. And if you don't heed those evacuation orders, you can die. And I know that Dr. Annie and I talked about somebody who didn't want to evacuate. And I said, really, they're making that choice for themselves, but they're also making a choice for the animal, because if the fire overtakes that home and it burns up and destroys all life, and you didn't take the animal, then you've killed that animal. It's a tough decision. I understand people, want to defend their homes. I mean, this is the biggest investment that many people have. It's where their equity is built. They have their life's possessions. They have memorabilia. So you can understand the incredible tension, and you can understand the heroism of people kind of defending against the fire with water hoses and whatever they can muster. But you've got to get out, because it's dangerous for the first responders who have to come in after you after there's a terrible crisis. It puts the animals at risk. And, I think that what Dr. Annie is doing is not diving into the flames. They're taking the animals in an orderly fashion, that people who are homeless, newly homeless, don't have another option. And then she's offering, I think this is so distinctive about Animal Wellness Foundation, free medical care to any animal who needs it. Whether it's a dog who broke a leg, or, an animal who's in distress, who needed a vet appointment already, and now they're homeless, and they can get that animal in front of Dr. Annie or one of her team of 5 other veterinarians to get treatment. So it's super important. And I think for us at Animal Wellness Foundation, Animal Wellness Action, we want to see Dr. Annie develop even more capacity to handle not just the domesticated animals, and the horses are a whole other problem with their size and the need for space, but then also the wild animals, because who knows, as she said, how many animals are scorched or, driven out of their homes and in a completely desperate situation, injured, hit by cars, you name it. And I think that's a whole other category of animals that need assistance during a disaster response. And frankly, most of the animal welfare groups are focused on the domesticated animals. And I think Animal Wellness Foundation has that broad view, looks at animal welfare through the broadest lens to help domesticated and wild animals.
Thank you, Wayne. Dr. Annie, what have you seen so far in terms of fire-related injuries among domesticated animals? And have you experienced yet any wild animals who have been brought to your attention and needing medical care because of this event?
So we've been seeing dogs with smoke inhalation. There are a couple cats coming in soon that have had smoke inhalation. We've had lacerations. we've had we have this one dog right now that was found running kind of like away from the fire, who I think got hit by a car. And we did emergency surgery to fix the leg. And he's doing fine. He's going to be fine. We just need to find his owner. A friend of mine who likes who has a foundation, and he donates to a lot of nonprofits. He reached out to me 3 days ago, and he said, Dr. Annie, I want to help the wildlife. Who is helping the wildlife? Can you figure out a nonprofit organization that I can support that's going out and helping the wildlife? And the thing that has really affected me deeply is I've had, I don't know, six to eight people trying to find out what's going on with the wildlife. And we can't locate an organization. One of the things that I'm trying to do, I did not set out on this task thinking that this was going to be my role by any means. But I've kind of turned into this communication hub, and I'm trying to unite all the nonprofits and all the organizations that are helping out. And I want to do this because I feel like if we can work together, we'll be more effective in everything that we're doing. Because I am getting calls about, pigs and chickens, and we're trying to help out the best that we can. I've connected with several organizations. I'm meeting with one. They're waiting to meet with me right now. Who goes behind the lines. So I'm connecting with the search and rescue teams in Los Angeles. So that's being very helpful.
Of course, the town of Altadena has been devastated, just like Pacific Palisades. And Altadena is in the orbit of the Pasadena Humane Society. And it's been great to see that organization doing that work. But when you think of all of the local humane societies, SPCAs, rescues, veterinary hospitals that are out there, this incredible network that our nation has to help companion animals, it is a much thinner, much more porous network when it comes to helping wildlife. And while we think that driving automobiles at 45 miles an hour on roads that blade through forests and through wild looking areas, or having giant buildings, that are 15 or 20 or 25 stories tall, that's normal to us. That's not normal for wildlife. Birds are crashing into buildings. That's a crisis for them. Animals are being struck by a vehicle of thousands of pounds moving at 45 miles an hour. That's a crisis. It is a life or death circumstance for animals. And I can tell you that when I have found animals on the road, what a desperate search it often is to find someone who can care for them. And I think that out of the ashes of this terrible crisis in Southern California, if we can help build under Dr. Annie's leadership a wildlife rehabilitation, wildlife veterinary care capacity, housing for animals in distress before they're released back in the wild, that will be a great outcome because it's always a crisis situation for wild animals with all of the human impacts that exist in an urban landscape like Los Angeles County, this vast area. So I'm excited about the possibility that so many supporters are enabling Animal Wellness Foundation to step up and just continue this effort. It's really important that people not think when Anderson Cooper is off the air on this issue, animals are still at risk. And thank God for Anderson Cooper. He does such a great job. He interviewed me a lot during Katrina, just like he interviewed Dr. Annie on the front lines. But the media interest will wane, but the needs of the animals are going to persist. And again, we have a long-term housing crisis that we're going to see in Southern California now because of these terrible fires.
Yeah, I think this is going to continue for a while. It's been a week, and the last I looked, they have 18% confinement or something for the fires. I mean, it's going to keep happening, and it's going to be a while until the fires are put out. And I think as it progresses in time, we're seeing more and more animals present themselves that are sick and needing veterinary care. because they're going to start, starving, not being able to find food, having repercussions from the smoke. And so I think this is just going to get worse.
The crisis after the crisis, there's the immediate need, and then there are often waves of follow-up needs. Wayne?
I was just going to say that, I really want to tip my hat to the firefighters and to the other emergency responders. They are part of this response for animals, right? When they put out a fire, that's saving animals' lives. It's not just saving homes. Animals are going to be burned up by these fires. They have nowhere to go. And I want to thank them. I want to thank, the police and others who are helping. They're rescuing animals as well. They're right there. And our, political leaders need to understand the importance of these first responders, the importance of the firefighters. And obviously, I think all of us, it's a consensus view that we've got to have these assets. And the only reason that Animal Wellness Foundation needs to do this is because there's still a lag in understanding that the animals have their homes, that animals are part of our lives. And there are still people who are not recognizing the connection between people and animals. And at the same time, the outpouring of support for Animal Wellness Foundation is an example of the deep vein of humanity that exists in so many people. So many people care about animals. They want to know that Dr. Annie's out there. They want to know that other veterinarians are out there. They want to know that rescuers are out there. They want to know that animals are going to get shelter. And I can just say that, having talked with Dr. Annie on these issues, she's going to be building more capacity than ever to address this running crisis.
Thank you for listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and follow Animal Wellness Action on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. To stay current with all of our news and information and to take action to help animals, sign up at animalwellnessaction.org. Until next time, remember, helping animals helps us all.